The moment I answered the phone, I heard his voice crack before he even formed a full sentence. "And what the hell did you say to them?" Brendan Ashford, the chief executive officer's son, was yelling so loudly it sounded like he was standing in my kitchen instead of miles across Portland. I stared at the blinking call timer as if it might explain how any of this was possible. I had been awake for barely 10 minutes. I had not spoken to a single person since leaving Solon Systems the day before. And somehow, he was already unraveling. "Brendan," I said slowly, my voice hoarse from a sleepless night. "I have no idea what you're talking about." He let out a sharp, broken breath, the kind people make when they realize they have lost control of something vital. "Do not play dumb with me. They called us at dawn. They want answers. They want documentation. They want you." His volume rose with every word, panic leaking through each syllable. I pressed the phone to my ear, trying to steady myself. "I have not spoken to anyone," I said again, "not a single person." "That is impossible," he snapped. "You must have said something, you—" His voice cracked, strained. And then there was a muffled scuffle on the other end of the line, as if someone had entered his office. He hissed something I could not make out, then came back sounding even more frantic. "Whatever you did, fix it. Now." I closed my eyes. The last 24 hours had already torn a hole straight through my life, 21 years at the company gone in 1 minute. And my $300,000 retirement bonus snatched away as casually as someone throwing out yesterday's mail. I had not laughed, had not slept, had barely even spoken. And yet here he was terrified, because something had happened that he could not control. "Brendan," I said quietly, "I have nothing to fix." The line went silent except for his shaky breathing. Then he ended the call without a word. I stood in my kitchen, the phone still warm in my hand, realizing the night after my firing had been quiet only for me. For the company, something had already begun to burn. The story you're about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. Each story carries its own message, voice, and emotional spine crafted uniquely for this narrative and not repeated across any others. I checked the time on my monitor for what felt like the 100th time. 24 hours, I whispered. The words tasted unreal. After 21 years at Solon Systems, I had finally reached the finish line. One more day and the $300,000 bonus would land in my account. One more day and I could step away from the endless grind of Portland's tech world. One more day and I could move my mother out of that cramped duplex in Eugene and give her the medical help she had been postponing for years. Mara, one of the junior analysts I had mentored, stopped by my desk with a mug in her hand. "You look lighter than usual," she said. "Something good." I let myself smile. "Tomorrow is my last milestone. After that, I'm free." Her eyebrows lifted. "You mean free as someone who has lived inside this building longer than she lived with her husband," I said. The joke came out soft, but the truth behind it hung between us. She knew my history, how late nights had piled up until my marriage cracked under the weight of another crisis call. Mara rested a hand on the edge of my desk. "I hope they appreciate what you gave this place." "Appreciation is optional," I replied. "Finishing strong is not." Behind us, I heard the click of polished shoes. Brendan Ashford strode past with that familiar blend of arrogance and entitlement. He did not look at me, and I did not expect him to. He never had much use for people who actually built the systems he took credit for. Mara lowered her voice. "He's been tense all morning. He's always tense," I said. "That is not my problem anymore." She nodded and left for her meeting, and I returned to my work, steady and hopeful. I had no idea the next signature placed in front of me would erase everything I had spent 2 decades building. I had barely finished reviewing the morning reports when Brendan Ashford pushed open my office door without knocking. His voice arrived before his expression did, sharp, impatient, already carrying the tone of a man who believed he owned every room he entered. "Anne," he said, dropping a folder onto my desk. "Sign this." I looked up. "What is it?" He leaned back like the answer bored him. "Termination notice, effective immediately." The words landed so cleanly that for a moment I thought I had misheard. "Termination, Brendan. My transition plan is already approved. The bonus is scheduled for tomorrow." "That was the plan," he replied, his smirk tightening. "But plans change." I kept my voice steady. "For what reason?" "No reason you need to worry about. He tapped the folder. Just sign. He said it like I was an inconvenience he was clearing off his desk. No explanation, no acknowledgement of 21 years of work, just a dismissal timed with surgical precision. I opened the folder. There it was, a single page. My name typed neatly at the top, the date stamped bold across the header. 24 hours before my bonus would mature. 24 hours before $300,000 would secure my retirement and my mother's care. "Brendan," I said quietly, "this timing is none of your business." He cut in. "You are done here." The finality in his voice wasn't confidence, it was satisfaction. I picked up the pen. My hand trembled, not with shame, but from the exhaustion of years spent propping up a company that had never once paused to look back at the people holding it together. As I pressed my signature onto the page, Brendan exhaled like a man who believed he had outplayed someone. "Leave your badge with HR," he said. "They'll escort you out." I closed the folder, stood, and walked past him without another word. I did not look back. I set the cardboard box on my kitchen table and lifted the lid with a kind of numb obedience. Pens, notebooks, an old badge, a photo of my mother from a decade ago. Each item felt like a small bruise. 21 years condensed into a box that barely weighed anything. When my phone buzzed, I ignored it. I was too tired to explain what had happened. Instead, I opened my laptop and began sorting through the digital folders I had carried with me from project to project. I told myself it was just housekeeping, but the truth was quieter. I needed something that reminded me my work had mattered. Halfway through an archive labeled Legacy Systems, I found an email thread I had forgotten about. It was from 5 years earlier, sent during a grueling negotiation with our largest client. I clicked it open. Anne, my former director, had written, "Please document the continuity requirements and attach them for legal review." Beneath it was my reply, a detailed explanation of a clause requiring my involvement or a formally approved replacement for any major system transition. If the company failed to notify the client had the right to freeze the entire deal until compliance was restored. I read the line twice, then a third time. My breath tightened. Brendan had fired me without a single notification sent to anyone. He had torn my name out of the transition plan less than 1 day before the final integration review. And according to this clause, that decision could halt a contract worth more than most departments generated in a year. A knock sounded on my door. My neighbor called my name softly, but I couldn't answer. I sat at the table, staring at the words I had written years earlier, understanding their weight in a way I never had before. My phone lit up with a Seattle area code. For a moment, I considered letting it ring out, but old habits die slowly, so I answered. "Anne, it's Marcus Hale," a familiar voice said, "Senior Project Director at North Shore Dynamics, our largest partner on the integration deal." I straightened instinctively, even though I no longer belonged to the company he thought I represented. "Marcus," I said quietly. "I'm going through the final transition packet," he continued. "Your name is on every approval path, every milestone, every compliance signature." He paused. "But I tried emailing you this morning and it bounced." My throat tightened. My access was removed. A deeper pause followed. "Removed? What do you mean removed?" I forced myself to say it clearly. "I was fired yesterday." The silence on the line stretched long. Then Marcus spoke again, but his tone had shifted. No confusion now, just calculation. "Anne, you wrote the continuity clause yourself. You told us our deployment depended on your role staying stable until final clearance. I know. Why in the world would they terminate you before the review?" His voice sharpened, though not at me. "This triggers a freeze. You understand that, right?" "I do." I heard papers shuffling on his end. "Urgent now. Did they notify you of a replacement? Did they file anything with our legal team?" "No." "Jesus," he muttered, almost to himself. "This affects more than our timeline. It affects our funding release." I closed my eyes but said nothing. Marcus exhaled, steady and grim. "I need to make some calls. This is going to escalate fast." "All right." He didn't offer sympathy. He didn't need to. The weight in his voice told me enough. "Anne," he added before disconnecting, "whatever happens next wasn't caused by you." When the call ended, I set the phone down slowly, understanding the shift that had just taken place in the world outside my apartment. The call came before sunrise. I answered without checking the screen, still half asleep. What did you say to them? Brendan's voice blasted through the speaker, raw and unfiltered. I held the phone away from my ear. Brendan, slow down. Do not tell me to slow down, he snapped. North Shore Dynamics froze their funding. They want written clarification about your removal. They are demanding a compliance audit. What did you tell them? I did not tell them anything, I said. Steady and clear. Marcus called me. He asked if I was still leading the transition. I told him the truth. The truth. His voice pitched upward. You told him you were fired. Yes. A strangled sound came through the line, part growl, part disbelief. Do you have any idea what you've done? I have done nothing except answer a question honestly. He inhaled sharply, like someone bracing against a blow. Anne, you have to call him back. Tell him you were mistaken. Tell him you misunderstood. Tell him, no, do not say no to me, he shouted. You think you can just walk away. You think this is a game. The board is on fire. Legal is circling me. My father wants answers I cannot give. Fix it. I am not part of the company anymore. My voice barely rose above a whisper, but it cut straight through his frenzy. You owe us this, he said, suddenly pleading. You owe me. I owe you nothing. He went silent. For a moment, all I heard was his uneven breathing, the sound of a man realizing the ground was shifting beneath him. Anne. He tried again. Softer now. Please. I ended the call. The screen went dark in my hand. His panic still echoed in the quiet room, but none of it belonged to me. By mid-morning, my phone buzzed with texts from former colleagues, short, frantic bursts of information that painted a picture without needing details. Solent Systems was unraveling. Someone wrote, investors are demanding a call, another said. Compliance just reopened the continuity files. A third message read, Brendan is losing it. I didn't reply to any of them. An hour later, Mara called. I almost let it ring, but something in me needed to hear a steadier voice. She didn't waste time. Anne, the board knows. North Shore contacted them directly. They want to know why your exit was never disclosed. I exhaled slowly. I figured that would happen. You don't understand, she said. The chief financial officer cornered Brendan in the executive hallway. I heard him ask why this wasn't reported to investor relations. Brendan tried to blame HR, but HR had the email trail. Everything leads back to him. Voices murmured behind her, low, tense. What about the founder's widow? I asked. That's the part shaking the walls, Mara whispered. She demanded to know why her husband's transition framework was ignored. She said you were the only person he trusted with the legacy systems. She asked Brendan, in front of half the board, how he justified cutting you out before final verification. I tightened my grip on the phone. What did he say? He kept insisting you were replaceable. But no one believed him. Not after the funding freeze. I stayed quiet, letting her words settle. Anne, she continued softly. He burned every bridge in one night. The same people who covered for him for years are tearing into him now. I am not involved, I said. I know. That is why it's happening. Her voice lowered. You didn't push anything, you just stepped out of the way. I thanked her and ended the call. For the first time in 2 decades, the fallout inside that boardroom no longer belonged to me. By late afternoon, an unfamiliar number appeared on my screen. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. Ms. Calder. A measured voice said, This is Daniel Price from the Solent Systems Board. He cleared his throat. We would appreciate a moment of your time. I sat down slowly. All right. We have reviewed the situation regarding the North Shore Dynamics freeze. He continued. It is significant. We need to stabilize investor confidence immediately. Your presence would resolve many concerns. My presence, I repeated. Yes, temporarily, he clarified. Strictly until the integration is complete. We would compensate you at a rate reflective of your experience. Substantially more than your prior salary. Plus a reinstatement of your bonus in full. The numbers he implied were tempting, life-changing, even. But his tone was clinical. The sort reserved for assets rather than people. I asked, why was I terminated in the first place? A pause followed. That decision was made without board consultation. We are addressing that separately. Addressing, I echoed. Not correcting, Ms. Calder, he said. Urgency slipping through his professionalism. We are offering you an opportunity to return in a position of authority. Investors trust you. Clients trust you. We need you. He did not say they respected me. He did not say they regretted how I had been treated. He did not even say Brendan was being held accountable. He simply needed me to plug the hole he had allowed someone else to tear open. "I appreciate the call," I said quietly, "but I will not return." "Are you certain?" he asked. "This is a considerable offer." "I am certain," I replied. "My value does not depend on reclaiming a seat in a room that dismissed me." He exhaled, defeated. "If you change your mind, I will not," I said, and ended the call. The apartment was silent again, but something inside me had shifted. I was not stepping back into the world I had left. I was walking toward something else. The email from Seattle arrived just after sunset. I recognized Marcus Hale's name immediately, but the tone of the message was different, formal, deliberate, carrying the weight of a decision already made. I called him back. He answered on the first ring. "Anne, I was hoping you'd respond tonight. I saw your message," I said. "You mentioned a proposal." "We did more than mention it," Marcus replied. "Our executive team met this afternoon. We want you as an independent systems advisor. Contract-based, project ownership, full autonomy." I blinked, letting the words settle. "Independent, yes. You would not be reporting to Salon Systems. You would report only to us." He paused, then added, "Your rate would reflect the scale of responsibility, far beyond what Solon's compensated you." My breath caught. "Marcus, that is generous. It is earned," he said. "You built the architecture we rely on. We are not interested in patching the damage their leadership created. We want stability. And that means you." A quiet laugh slipped out of me, small, bewildered, but real. "I have spent 21 years trying to protect systems other people kept breaking. Then let us give you one you can build without interference." His voice softened. "Take it, Anne. This is yours." I leaned back, feeling a slow warmth spread through me, not triumph, but a kind of overdue recognition. "Yes," I said, "I'll do it." "Good," he replied. "I'll have the contract sent tonight." When the call ended, I sat alone in the quiet, the offer echoing around me. I hadn't fought for this door. Someone else's mistake had simply pushed it open. For the first time in decades, I wasn't stepping into a role that drained me. I was stepping into one that finally belonged to me. 2 days after I accepted the consulting agreement, news from Solent Systems spread through the industry like a shockwave. The merger collapsed before the board could finish their emergency session. Stockholders demanded explanations in public forums. Departments that had ignored problems for years sent panicked internal memos looking for someone to blame. By the end of the week, a special review panel was announced. Their findings landed harder than anyone expected. Brendan Ashford was removed from his position in a public filing that named him directly. Decision-making negligence. It was the kind of phrase executives spend entire careers avoiding. And now it sat next to his name in every financial bulletin across the Pacific Northwest. There was no quiet reassignment to a different division. No golden parachute, no father stepping in to rescue him from the fallout he had manufactured with his own impatience. For the first time since he walked into my office, he faced the consequences alone. I received a message from Mara. "It's over. People are stunned he's actually gone." I thanked her and left it at that. There was nothing for me to add. That same afternoon, my contract from North Shore Dynamics arrived. I reviewed the terms twice, signed, and sent it back. The moment I clicked the final confirmation, I let out a breath I had been holding for years without realizing it. I sat at my kitchen table, the same spot where I had heard Brendan scream at me at dawn, and opened my laptop to begin my first independent briefing. There was no celebration in the air, no triumphant music, no sense of revenge fulfilled, just a quiet steadiness, a clean beginning. My life had not ended the day he fired me. It had cleared space for something better. And as I stared at the new chapter unfolding in front of me, I understood the lesson tucked inside everything I had survived sometimes. The doors that close hardest are the ones that force us toward the lives we were meant to claim. The first time I knew my boss had failed to steal my $1 million in shares was when his lawyer stopped reading my contract mid-sentence. "This doesn't make sense," the lawyer said, lowering the papers and scanning the page again. "The vesting language here is different." The room went quiet, too quiet. I was sitting at the end of the conference table, hands folded, saying nothing. Across from me, David Keller. My direct manager for the last 3 years shifted in his chair. His jaw tightened. He leaned forward, trying to see the page the lawyer was holding. "Read it again," David said, his voice sharp. "You're misreading it." The lawyer didn't respond right away. He cleared his throat and read the clause out loud. Slower this time, each word landing heavier than the last. When he reached the end, he stopped. David looked at me then, really looked at me. His face drained of color. "How did she play us like this?" he blurted. No one answered him. I didn't smile. Not now. I just watched the moment settle in the shift. The realization, the sudden understanding that something they thought was handled was very much not. My name is Alara. I worked for this company in San Francisco for almost 10 years. I was fired on a Friday afternoon, one day before my shares were supposed to vest, $1 million worth. They believed they had timed it perfectly. 48 hours earlier, David had said my name the same way he always did when he wanted to sound kind before delivering bad news. "I'm sorry," he told me. "This isn't personal. I have to let you go." I had thanked him. Now, sitting in that room, listening to their lawyer stumble over a clause they had approved years ago, I stayed silent. Silence was no longer weakness. It was leverage. The lawyer folded the contract closed and said, carefully, "We need to pause this meeting." And just like that, everything changed. The story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. It is designed to reflect common workplace conflicts, ethical dilemmas, and emotional struggles faced by individuals in professional environments. Any resemblance to real people, companies, or events is purely coincidental. The purpose of this story is to explore personal resilience, accountability, and the consequences of choices not to target or accuse any real individual or organization. 2 days earlier, I was still an employee, still counting hours, still believing that loyalty would be enough to protect what I had earned. I circled the date on my paper calendar with a black pen and pressed hard enough to tear the page. Friday. 10 years. That was the deal. 10 years of staying when people left, of answering messages at midnight, of postponing vacations because a launch was critical. 10 years distilled into one square on a calendar taped inside my desk drawer. "You're really still using that thing," Mark from the back-end team said when he walked past my desk. He nodded at the calendar. "Old school." "I like knowing where I stand," I said. He hesitated. "Right, yeah." He didn't smile. He didn't stay to chat. He kept walking. By mid-morning, the quiet had settled in. Not the normal focused quiet, but the kind where conversations stop when you arrive. I joined a planning call at 10. 3 managers were already on. David's voice came through first. "Let's keep this short." I spoke once, offering a fix I'd already tested. No one responded. "Okay," David said after a pause. "We'll circle back when I asked. Later," he said. "No need to overcomplicate things today." Today, the word landed wrong. At lunch, I sat with Maya from product. She pushed her food around and avoided my eyes. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded too quickly. "Just tired." "You've been tired for weeks." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Did you hear anything?" Hear what? She shook her head. "Never mind." In the afternoon, HR sent a reminder about badge compliance. My name wasn't on the list, but the email was addressed to everyone except me. I noticed because I was used to being copied on everything. At 4, David walked past my desk without stopping. He didn't say my name. At 5:30, my calendar alert went off. 1 day left. I closed my laptop slowly and sat there, listening to the hum of notifications that weren't meant for me anymore. Whatever was coming had already been decided. David asked me to step into his office at 4:45. He didn't look up when I sat down. He straightened a stack of papers that didn't need straightening, then folded his hands together as if he'd practiced the position. "Alara," he said, using my name the way people do when they want credit for sounding human. "I'll get right to it. We're making some organizational changes." I waited. "This isn't about your performance," he continued. "You've done strong work. Everyone agrees on that." "Then why am I here?" I said. He exhaled through his nose. "The company is restructuring. Your role has been identified as redundant. After almost 10 years, I lead 2 active initiatives." I said, "Both are understaffed." "Yes," he said quickly, "and those responsibilities will be redistributed." "To whom?" He didn't answer that. He reached for a folder and slid it across the desk, stopping it just short of my hands. This decision is final, he said. Effective end of day. I glanced at the clock on the wall behind him. 4:47. So this is it, I said. No notice. We're offering a standard separation package, he said. It's generous. I vest tomorrow, I said. He didn't blink. Your equity status will be outlined in the agreement. Tomorrow, I repeated. Alara, he said, lowering his voice. I understand this is difficult, but timing is coincidental. I almost laughed. You've known about this for a while, I said, haven't you? He closed the folder. This conversation is about today. He stood up, signaling the meeting was over. Human Resources will walk you through next steps, he added. I wish you the best. I stood too. My hands felt steady. That surprised me. Thank you, I said. His eyes flicked up then. Confused by the word, I walked out knowing the date had never been an accident. David was already halfway to the door when I spoke. Thank you. He stopped. His hand stayed on the doorknob, but he turned back slowly, like he wasn't sure he'd heard me correctly. I'm sorry, he said, for letting me know directly, I said. My voice sounded even. I appreciate that. He studied my face, searching for something that wasn't there. Anger, panic, tears. I gave him none of it. You're taking this? Well, he said. I don't see another option, I replied. That wasn't the full truth, but it was close enough. He nodded, unsettled. Human Resources will be waiting at your desk. I assumed they would be, I said. Outside his office, Claire from HR was already standing there. She held a slim folder against her chest, lips pressed into a line she probably practiced in the mirror. Alara, she said gently, if you'll come with me. As we walked, she kept talking, filling the space. This process should be quick. We'll collect your badge, go over logistics, and you'll receive your paperwork by email. Today, I said. Yes, she replied. Today, at my desk. She watched as I shut down my computer. She didn't offer to help. She didn't look away either. I'll need your signature once the documents arrive, she said. The sooner, the better. I'll review everything, I said. She smiled tightly. Of course. While she waited, my eyes landed on the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was a folded copy of my employment contract, creased and marked from years ago. I hadn't looked at it in a long time. I hadn't needed to. But I remembered one line. I remembered the argument it caused. I remembered insisting it stay exactly as written. Claire cleared her throat. Your badge, please. I placed it in her hand. She glanced at the screen, then back at me. Access will be disabled shortly. I expected that, I said. She paused. Most people don't. I picked up my bag and stood. As I walked away, David was watching from down the hall. His expression hadn't changed. Mine hadn't either. Whatever he thought he had taken from me was already out of his reach. The email arrived before I reached home. Separation agreement. The subject line read, no greeting, no delay. I opened it and scrolled past the first page without reading. I already knew what it would say. Confidentiality, non-disparagement, a severance amount that looked generous if you didn't know what had just been erased. The equity section was on the 4th page. Employee acknowledges that termination prior to vesting results in forfeiture of all unvested stock grants. I read that sentence 3 times. My phone buzzed. Claire from Human Resources. Just making sure you received the documents, she said. Her tone was light, practiced. We recommend signing today so payroll can process everything cleanly. Today, I repeated. Yes. She said, it's in your best interest. My equity is addressed there. I said, there's nothing unusual about the language, she replied. It's standard. Standard for whom? I said. She paused. For situations like this. I pictured David's face when he said the decision was final. The precision of the timing. 4:47. 1 day before vesting. Close enough to tomorrow to sound accidental. Far enough to make it legal. They believed the agreement made it permanent. I need time to review, I said. Claire exhaled. The offer isn't open-ended. Alara, neither was my employment, I said. She lowered her voice. Dragging this out will only make things harder. After the call ended, I sat at my kitchen table with the document open in front of me. My name filled the pages. So did words designed to make resistance feel pointless. 6 months of pay, health coverage, a clean break. All they needed was my signature. I thought about how tired I felt, how easy it would be to sign, to stop thinking, to let the anger dissolve into paperwork. I closed the document without responding. If they were so certain they had won, they would not be rushing me to agree. 8 years earlier, I had been sitting across from a woman named Rachel Moreno in a narrow office with a door that wouldn't quite close. "You don't need to apologize for asking questions," she said, tapping her pen against the contract. "You're paying me to be difficult." I had hesitated before hiring her. $3,000 felt reckless at the time. I was still paying off student loans, still sharing an apartment, still trying to convince myself that this job would finally be the one that lasted. "The equity is the real compensation," I told her. "That's what matters." "Then that's what we protect," she said. She flipped to the vesting section and frowned. "This says your shares vest at the end of the business day on your anniversary." "That's standard," I said. "Standard is not the same as safe," she replied. "Business day depends on employment status. Calendar day does not." I watched as she drew a clean line through the phrase and rewrote it. "Calendar day, midnight. No exceptions. This will annoy them," I said. She smiled. "Good. Annoyed lawyers pay attention. Lazy ones don't." When the company sent back the revised contract, their legal team had initialed the change without comment. No questions, no pushback. Just ink and approval. Back in my kitchen, years later, I opened the old scanned copy on my laptop. My eyes went straight to that clause. Vesting occurs at 0 hours on the anniversary calendar day, regardless of employment status. Midnight, not end of business, not subject to interpretation. Midnight belonged to the calendar, not the company. My phone buzzed with another message from Human Resources. "Please confirm when you'll be signing." I didn't respond. I closed the document and looked at the clock on my screen. There were still hours to go, and they mattered more than anything I had done in 10 years. I waited, trusting the version of myself who had insisted on that one line. I didn't turn on the television. I didn't answer my phone. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and the equity portal loaded, watching the seconds in the corner of the screen move forward one by one. The company had already taken my badge. My email access was gone, but the portal still let me log in. For now. At 11:30, my phone buzzed. Claire again. "We still haven't received your signed agreement." Her message read. I didn't reply. At 11:45, another notification appeared, this time from David. "Let's talk," he wrote. "We can clear this up." Clear it up. The words felt heavier than they should have. I imagined someone in an office somewhere, fingers hovering over a keyboard, debating whether they could change something fast enough. A timestamp, a setting, a record. I imagined how easy it would be to say it was a technical issue, a delay, a correction. The clock changed to 11:58. I refreshed the page. Nothing happened. At 11:59, my hands started to shake. I pressed them flat against the table and waited. Midnight arrived without ceremony. I refreshed the page again. The screen blinked, then reloaded. The numbers changed. $1 million in shares, fully vested. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. I refreshed again. The same result. Again. Still there. I opened the detailed statement and read every line. The date. The time. 0 hours on the anniversary calendar day. I took a screenshot, then another. I downloaded the statement and saved it twice, once on my laptop, once to an external drive I hadn't used in years. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a voicemail notification. I didn't listen. The shares were mine now, legally, irrevocably. And yet, as I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair, the relief didn't come. What settled instead was a quiet understanding. They weren't going to accept this easily. My phone started ringing at 8:15 the next morning. David's name flashed first. I let it go to voicemail. At 8:22, an unfamiliar number followed. Then another, by 8:30. My inbox filled with messages marked urgent. At 8:41, an email came through from the company's legal department. "There appears to be some confusion regarding your equity status," it read. "We would like to discuss a resolution." Confusion. The word felt intentional. I called Rachel. "They're calling it a misunderstanding," I said. She didn't sound surprised. "They always do. They want to talk." "Of course they do," she replied. "Talking is how they pressure you into doubting what's already clear." Another email arrived while she was still on the line. "We're prepared to offer a settlement," the message said. $600,000 in exchange for a full release. I read it out loud. Rachel was quiet for a moment. That's not negotiation, she said. That's panic. By noon, the tone changed. The emails grew sharper. Mentions of intent, interpretations, company policy. One message warned that pursuing the equity could expose me to legal action. They're trying to scare you, Rachel said, because fear works on people who think they're alone. That was when a text came through from an old colleague named Ian. We hadn't spoken in years. They did the same thing to me. He wrote, day before vesting, offered me half, told me I'd lose everything if I fought. Another message followed, then another, different names, same story, same timing. I forwarded everything to Rachel. This isn't a mistake. I said, no, she replied, it's a system. By late afternoon, the company stopped asking to talk and started demanding. Deadlines appeared. Language hardened. They were no longer pretending to fix an error. They were trying to protect a method that had worked before, and they were finally realizing it might not work this time. The meeting was scheduled for 9 sharp. I joined the call with Rachel already on the line. Let them talk first, she said quietly. David's voice came through, tighter than I remembered. Thank you for making time. Alara, we want to resolve this professionally. You've already defined what professional looks like, Rachel replied. Go on. A man introduced himself as senior counsel. His tone was calm, careful. After reviewing the vesting clause in Ms. Alara's contract, we acknowledge there is ambiguity. There isn't, Rachel said. There is language. Approved by your firm. Initialed by your firm. Silence followed. Then papers shifting. We are prepared to recognize the vesting, the lawyer said, in exchange for a standard confidentiality agreement. No, I said. It was the first word I'd spoken. David inhaled sharply. Alara, this doesn't need to become adversarial. It already did, I said. When you fired me one day before vesting. Another pause. Rachel leaned forward. My client will accept full recognition of her equity, including $1 million in vested shares. Without restriction, no non-disparagement, no silence. That's not typical, the lawyer said. What's not typical is terminating employees days before vesting. Rachel replied, we have documentation of similar cases. David spoke again, his voice lower. You've made your point. I'm not finished, I said. This didn't happen once. It happened because you expected people to fold. The lawyer cleared his throat. What are you asking for? Written policy changes, Rachel said. Clear vesting language applied retroactively, and notification to affected former employees. David muttered something under his breath. We're not interested in punishment, Rachel continued. We're interested in prevention. The call ended 20 minutes later with terms agreed in principle. No raised voices, no victory laps. When the screen went dark, Rachel smiled slightly. They didn't win today. I closed my laptop, feeling the weight shift. They hadn't just lost control of my equity. They had lost control of the rules. The confirmation email arrived on a Tuesday morning. Your equity transfer has been completed. It said, no apology, no explanation, just a transaction number and a timestamp. I forwarded it to Rachel. Done. I wrote. She replied a minute later, as it should be. The $1 million in shares sat in my account, unchanged when I refreshed the page. Real, mine. Untouchable. I didn't celebrate. I closed the tab and made coffee instead, letting the quiet settle. A week later, Maya called me. They pulled David from leadership, she said. He's still here, technically, but he doesn't make decisions anymore. I pictured his office door, always half closed. That won't sit well with him. It already doesn't, she said. They rewrote the vesting policy, clear language, calendar day, no exceptions. Everyone had to acknowledge it. I thanked her and hung up. Rachel called that afternoon. They notified the former employees, she said. The ones affected before you. Some are reopening discussions. I'm glad, I said, and I meant it. When everything was finished, there was no dramatic exit, no final meeting. I returned my laptop by courier and deleted the last email thread. The company didn't belong to me anymore, and I didn't belong to it. What they lost wasn't just money. They lost the assumption that silence could be bought. They lost the convenience of fear. They lost control over a process they had relied on for too long. I kept one thing from my desk, the paper calendar, the square with the torn edge and the heavy black circle around that final day. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. Here is the lesson I carry forward. Loyalty without clarity is a liability, and trust without proof is a risk. Protect what you earn while you are still calm enough to read the fine print. Because when the moment comes, preparation is the only leverage that cannot be taken from you.